Let's go to the opposite end of the spectrum, where apparently Domino's Pizza in a marketing attempt here, maybe, I guess, it's nice that they're filling in some potholes.
Right, it is nice, but because it undermines the idea that we need government in order to have public infrastructure, I'm going to go out on a limb and say you're going to find a way to twist it into a bad thing. Am I right?
But it also is a good example of like why this won't be sufficient, right? The limitations of it.
Well, this approach may have some limitations and drawbacks, but first of all, let's be honest, so does government. I mean, the fact that there's a need for Domino's to do this in the first place should kind of make that clear. Second of all, any approach you take is really going to have drawbacks and limitations. I mean, the world is imperfect, people are imperfect, that's just the reality of it. The nice thing about the free market is that you're not bound to any one particular approach. And I think that's the biggest difference in the mindset between authoritarians and libertarians. Authoritarians have this idea that there's only ever one specific solution to a problem, and that's why we need government to step in and enforce it on everybody. Whereas in the free market, you're free to try any multitude of different solutions to a given problem. If one doesn't work, there's another one you can replace it with or perhaps supplement it with.
Here is Domino's filling potholes. Now, apparently, they're only doing it in some areas.
Yeah, right now they're only doing it in some areas. That's kind of how it works. Whenever a business tries something new, they usually start off small scale, then expand as that program they're doing becomes more successful. And there's a good chance they'd be able to do it in a lot more places if they didn't need government permission first. Yeah, see, because government more or less has a monopoly on all the roads in this country, they can do a shitty job at maintaining them. And if you want to be able to do it better, you need their permission.
And they're putting up a big Domino's sign that they did this.
Help maintain public infrastructure, get rewarded with advertising. I don't see what the problem is. If anything, that's a good thing because now there's an incentive for companies to contribute to the public good, and we'll likely see more and better maintained roads as a result of this. Which would you rather have? A system where some IRS jackboot threatens you into involuntarily contributing to half-assed maintained roads, or a system where people are voluntarily rewarded for doing a good job at maintaining roads?
I would like them actually to be fined.
Hey pal, you just blowing from Stupid Town?
Fined for what? Yeah, how dare those greedy bastards take their own time and their own profit to help do something good for the community. Like, if you see a company doing something good for the community and your initial response is that they should be punished for it, then quite frankly, you're either a moron or a jackass. Or both. Especially in this case, they're doing something good that Sam likes. If you've ever watched the Majority Report before, you'll know that Sam is constantly complaining about the condition of the infrastructure in our country and how the government's doing a poor job at maintaining it. But when a private sector company comes along and does that, they should be penalized for it. So the very action you advocate for government to do suddenly becomes bad when it's done by a private sector entity. Once again, this double standard rears its ugly head. The idea that there should be a separate moral standard for government and private sector. And people wonder why libertarians compare government to a religion.
And yeah, another way to look at it is they're putting up billboards on the streets. But
exactly.
So Domino's takes time, money, and resources out of its own profit to do something good for the community, and you're pissed because they will get a little bit of advertising out of it.
You know what, motherfuckers? Eat a dick, nigga!
Also, you gotta love this Kafka trap the left has on the private sector. Private sector companies are greedy and evil, which is why we need government to regulate and tax them. But when there's a clear and obvious example of a private company doing something good for the public, then it's like, oh, they're just doing it for PR or marketing, not actual altruism, or they're undermining government.
But here is this story from Fox News, of course.
Domino's is now stepping in to help repair our nation's infrastructure. Their Paving for Pizza campaign is filling potholes around the country, making sure your pies make it home in one piece. The company is asking people to nominate their towns to have their potholes filled. And if they would like to bring the truck by 6th Avenue, I'd be glad to go out and check it out.
There you go. They get their...
There's like 5 or 6 towns that have gotten it so far. One with like 40 potholes.
Nothing better than a system that is based on lottery to get infrastructure repairs, right?
Are you kidding me? That's how it works under government. When there's no market signals to give feedback on what resources are needed where, well then you're going in blind and you have to kind of guess. So every government service is essentially provided by lottery, except for perhaps the actual lottery, since it's funded voluntarily and subject to market signals.
And isn't it ironic?
At this rate,
This is like, isn't it? This is like, it's like the Hunger Games on some level, right? If you win, your village is going to get potholes.
This assumes, of course, that it's just Domino's doing this. There's a very good chance other businesses will notice the publicity that Domino's is getting from this, or from this realize how crucial public infrastructure is to their business as well, and also follow suit, doing something similar.
Right. I feel like that's the only unrealistic part about those dystopian movies is that they make like everybody in the media sound really mean and intense, but it really would be like, hey, we're gonna have another teens fight each other to the death contest. That's right, Karen.
So you're telling me that the media has a tendency to take things the government does that are bad and portray them as if they're good? Gee, you don't say.
Colin from, sorry.
I really like the passage from the press release that they released. I put it in there, but I think it got deleted. It's something like, there's nothing worse than trying to enjoy the delicious meal of Domino's pizza and you hit a pothole, and now we're fixing the potholes so you can all enjoy your pizza without any potholes.
Are you really supposed to be eating pizza while you drive?
Well, the technology to have self-driving cars is just around the corner.
Maybe you're bringing the pizza home. Hey, don't tell me how to live.
They deliver, right? I mean, they probably get more out of the city.
Right, which is why they have an incentive to make sure that the city streets are being properly maintained and available for use. As a matter of fact, back in 2017, the East Coast was hit with a huge snowstorm, and a lot of roads had to flat out shut down because the city municipal road departments were just overwhelmed. Well, Pornhub, of all companies, decided that they were going to step up and offer plowing services. In a program aptly named Get Plowed, Pornhub hired a whole army of plow trucks and sent them through New York, Boston, and other affected cities. Now, if you take a minute to think about Pornhub, the type of product or service that they provide, they don't rely on the public roads to do business. You can access their content from your home. So if companies that don't rely on public infrastructure to do business are willing to voluntarily fund their maintenance, I think it would be a fair thing to assume that companies that do rely on them to do business will voluntarily pay for them.
What they should do is just give money to the municipalities where they exist and pay an excise tax.
They do. Domino's does pay taxes to the government, and yet they still have to go out and do this. Could you imagine paying somebody to do something and still end up having to do it yourself? Like, imagine paying the fee for a maid service but still ending up cleaning your own house. This would never fly in the private sector, but government gets a pass on it.
Because their business is so based on delivery and the use of our roads for commercial purposes.
Again, Domino's does pay taxes. We all pay taxes. Governments get a crap ton of money off of us every year. So very clearly, the condition of our public infrastructure is not a financial one. Rather, it's a problem of lack of responsibility. See, government could have all the money in the world, but if they're not going to spend it responsibly, then that's not going to address any of the problems. So when Sam calls for Domino's to pay more in taxes instead of just fixing the roads themselves, well, that's kind of ignoring the whole problem that Domino's is addressing. The reason Domino's is paving the roads is specifically because the government isn't using the money you give them to fix the roads. When you pay your taxes, that money goes to locking people up over weed, or bombs to drop on people in Iraq, or Joe Blow off the street who decide he'd rather collect welfare than work. It goes to everything except fixing the roads, and there's a good chance if we take Sam's advice and just have Domino's give the money they're using to fix the roads to government, they would use that money in the same way.
Well, another point is I have a brother who delivered pizzas and they don't pay for maintenance of those cars.
Well, in that case, your brother should be thanking Domino's for making the roads less strenuous on his car.
Like, this is just another way of getting around that, right?
Right.
What do you mean getting around that? Are these restaurants obligated to pay for the maintenance of their drivers' cars? A lot of restaurants do give their delivery drivers a stipend for stuff like fuel and maintenance, but it's a perk of the job, not something they're entitled. And what do you mean by pay for the maintenance of their car? So if some delivery driver is driving like a dipshit and wrecks his car and totals it, the restaurant should get the repair bill? And that concludes this response. Aye. Only Sam Seder could take a private company going out of their way using money from their own profit to do something good for the community and twist it to be bad. I think this more or less proves that the left is more concerned about expanding government power than they are actually serving the community. Because whenever a private sector company comes along that does something that they like or does what they advocate for, like taking care of the poor, repairing public infrastructure, cleaning up the environment, whatever they think government should do, they always come up with some kind of reason that it's not good enough. While Domino's is out filling holes in the roads, allow me to fill the holes in your mind. Subscribe, watch more videos, and if you want to do something generous for the community like Domino's did, links to my Patreon and PayPal will be in the description. Until next time, this has been Philosophossum, making stupidity play dead. Have a good one.